I also wonder, bro, like from a human perspective, Molly was your sidekick for 10 years. We don't need to know she abruptly resigned.
Yeah.
Protect her at all costs.
Yeah.
That's my big thing, Social Trey.
I thought she was
Like,
here for the end of the year. I guess she's
well,
done now.
remember, she didn't want it to leak because Molly ends up putting out a statement that, hey, it's unfortunately leaked. I didn't want it to, etc. But protect her at all costs.
When ESPN handed Stephen A. Smith a contract worth nearly $100 million, it wasn't just a payday. It was a declaration of dominance. Within weeks, the man who had already become the loudest voice in sports media was officially the face of the network. His empire stretched across First Take, Monday Night Football, and every major broadcast that needed his energy to pull ratings. But almost as quickly as his contract headlines faded, another story began to rise. The sudden, unceremonious exit of Molly Qerim, the woman who had quietly kept that empire standing for a decade. One moment she was the calm at the center of chaos, the steady presence who managed to corral egos and tempers on live television. The next, she was gone. No farewell show, no send-off, no explanation that made sense. Just a single social media post and silence.
Breaking news in the sports media world, Molly Qerim, I believe that's how you say her last name, she is actually going to be stepping down from First Take today, or she at the end of the year, she was going to be stepping down as the host of First Take.
The timing was impossible to ignore. Smith's record-breaking deal was still making waves when reports emerged that Qerim had rejected a contract renewal worth a fraction of what her co-host was earning. According to former colleague Marcellus Wiley, she was offered around $500,000 a year, less than 1/30th of Smith's new paycheck. Wiley claimed Qerim was frustrated, not just by the money, but by what it symbolized. She had carried the show through ratings peaks, managed fiery debates that often went viral, and yet, insiders say, she was blocked at every turn when she tried to expand her role. She wanted to host her own program, to develop new projects, to grow. ESPN, according to those close to the talks, kept saying no.
Well, let's remember, wasn't it just last week Stephen A. was on air bragging about the people he stood up for to get paid and how many, Cam, I did it for Shannon Sharp and I did it for this person and that person. And when I look at the abrupt, I'm not coming into work tomorrow.
Yeah.
That also is like, maybe there's pointing a finger at Stephen A. Smith.
For viewers, her presence on First Take had always been more than moderation. She was the equalizer, a respected broadcaster who navigated emotional intelligence as easily as stats. But behind the scenes, sources say she was being pushed into a corner. As Stephen A. Smith's power ballooned, hers quietly shrank. When contract talks began this summer, she asked for more money and more freedom. Executives allegedly balked at both. It wasn't just about cost, it was about control. And that's when things began to fracture. Officially, ESPN's president of content, Burke Magnus, said the split was mutual. He called her an awesome person and insisted there was no controversy. Yet the network's response told another story. Within hours of her departure, every promotional image, every teaser clip, and every segment mention of Qerim was scrubbed from First Take's feeds. Even her name was removed from the show's online bios. Colleagues like Chris Mad Dog Russo admitted they were blindsided. He said Stephen A. called him the night before to tell him Molly was out. By the next morning, she had vanished from the screen. The abruptness was shocking, even in a business that moves fast. When Qerim finally addressed it, she did so quietly, through a short Instagram post. After much reflection, I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter. The line that followed said everything. The news came out earlier than I intended. That was the first crack in the official story. If this was just a standard exit, why had the news leaked before she was ready? And why did her goodbye feel more like damage control than celebration?
Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years.
The next morning, Stephen A. Smith opened First Take with a tribute that sounded heartfelt on the surface. She's been an enormous part of our success, he said, calling her a friend and a vital piece of the show's identity. But hours later, on his radio program, his tone shifted. He described her leaving as an abrupt resignation and added, "The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all's business." That sentence became the spark. To some, it sounded like loyalty. To others, like a red flag. What details was he refusing to discuss? Why mention them at all if there was nothing to hide?
Don't tell us the details, then tell us you're not gonna tell us the details.
And then add on that, I don't know the
I don't
details.
know the
Like,
details.
what are you doing? What are you doing?
Like he said this. He said she abruptly resigned. That's the detail.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna say, but don't ask me the details, because I'm not gonna tell y'all the details. That's none of y'all business.
The contradiction didn't go unnoticed. Former ESPN analyst Emmanuel Acho publicly called out Smith's behavior, saying he couldn't both deny knowing the details and then admit there were details he wouldn't share. Fans online echoed the sentiment, accusing Smith of trying to control the narrative. Some believed he was protecting the network. Others suspected he was protecting himself. After all, as executive producer of First Take, Smith's influence extended beyond commentary. He helped shape the show's staffing and tone. That power made him both indispensable and untouchable. Meanwhile, whispers began to circulate about what really went on behind the scenes. Insiders claimed Qerim had felt undervalued and isolated during her final months. Others pointed to moments on air that, in hindsight, seemed tense. One resurfaced clip showed Smith making a joke about Qerim eating during commercial breaks. "You can ask Molly to do a lot of things," he said, "but asking her to fast and not eat? That's going to be a problem." Qerim's response was quick and cutting. "Adult woman, proud of it." The exchange went viral, with viewers accusing Smith of crossing a professional line. It might have seemed minor at the time, but in the larger context of her exit, it began to look like a symptom of something deeper, a pattern of diminishing respect on the air and backstage.
Jason, I actually watched that whole video clip of Stephen A. Smith. I just thought it was funny. It ain't none of y'all business. It was a contract negotiation. Oh. So that was about the money. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for cluing it. It's always about the money, though. It's like in boxing. Why didn't this fight happen? Easy, there wasn't enough.
Then came another twist. Within 24 hours of Qerim's announcement, ESPN revealed a shiny new contract extension for Malika Andrews. The timing was uncanny. One veteran producer told Front Office Sports the move felt suspiciously convenient. Andrews, a rising star with a strong following, was suddenly positioned as the next major face of ESPN's studio programming. Fans wondered if Qerim had been quietly pushed out to make room for someone younger, cheaper, and easier to market. The network dismissed that notion, but the optics spoke louder than any denial.
And now here we are, we have her replacement. I look back, and this stuff always tends to happen like a month directly after it happened. I mean, this is literally a month to the day, I think, that Molly Qerim, it broke that she was leaving First Take. So here we are exactly 1 month later. We have her replacement, her full-time replacement in Shea Cornett.
Inside Bristol, according to one source, everyone was talking about how fast it happened. By Tuesday morning, Qerim's name was gone from call sheets. Her dressing room had been reassigned. On-air tryouts began almost immediately, with rotating hosts filling her seat while the network searched for a permanent replacement. Within weeks, Shea Cornett was named the new face of First Take. The official announcement described her as meticulous and a perfect fit. But many in the industry couldn't shake the sense that ESPN had been planning the change long before the public knew.
Now, I think last week or maybe earlier this week, we had Mad Dog saying some stuff about how maybe it was ESPN that actually wanted to move Molly Qerim off of First Take and put her in other roles. And I think Mad Dog called it a demotion.
Even Chris Russo, who's appeared on the show for years, admitted the speed of the transition was startling. "If you're gone, they get you out in 10 minutes, he said during a podcast appearance. That line captured the cold efficiency of television, and perhaps the ruthlessness behind the curtain. If Molly Qerim's decade-long career could be erased overnight, what did that say about who really held the power? The deeper we look, the clearer it becomes that Qerim's exit wasn't just a business decision. It was the byproduct of a shifting power structure. Stephen A. Smith's contract expansion didn't simply reward success, it redefined hierarchy. With $20 million a year on the line, he wasn't just the star, he was the institution. Every programming decision began revolving around him. His brand dictated direction, tone, and talent choices. And when one personality becomes that big, the rest inevitably shrink. Former insiders suggest that once Smith's deal was finalized, internal priorities changed. The network began reorganizing its programming to showcase his voice across multiple platforms. That left little room for co-stars to grow independently. For Qerim, who had built her reputation as more than a moderator, that meant stagnation. She wanted evolution. The network wanted obedience. In the end, neither side budged. As all of this unfolded, another story was forming beneath the headlines, the strain of maintaining composure in an environment that demanded constant performance. Qerim had spoken publicly about her long struggle with endometriosis, a condition that often forced her to push through intense pain while hosting live television. That part of her story rarely made the press releases, but colleagues say it added to the pressure she faced. Balancing a demanding role, uneven pay, and the physical toll of her condition created a storm even she couldn't sustain forever.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Aware, thoughtful, and passionate.
What do you have too much of?
Shoes,
Guilty pleasure.
retail therapy.
What would you do if you didn't host First Take?
I would work for a global nonprofit or host a travel.
Still, the timing of her departure continues to raise questions. Why leave so suddenly when her contract still had months left? Why now, just as Stephen A. Smith's influence was expanding into new shows, new roles, and new partnerships? Was her decision purely personal? Or did it mark a quiet protest against a system that had outgrown her? Every official statement from ESPN insists there's no shoe waiting to drop, but every piece of the timeline suggests otherwise. The secrecy, the contradictions, the back-to-back announcements, all of it feels too orchestrated to be coincidence. And when we line up the events, from Smith's record deal to Qerim's erased presence and Andrew's immediate elevation, one pattern emerges. The network is evolving around one man's gravity.
I looked up to Stephen A. Smith for a very, very long time. He was one of the reasons why I got into sports media, but then I ended up meeting him. Wasn't the most, one of those don't meet your hero type experience. I don't know all the details, and I'm not going to tell you all the details because it's not your business. But I'm gonna be honest, it was an uncomfortable situation, and now watching him, get older, trying to go into the digital space, it can be a little uncomfortable.
What we're left with is a question that refuses to fade. Stephen A. Smith described Qerim's exit as uncomfortable. But uncomfortable for whom? For him, navigating the optics of a vanished co-host? For ESPN, scrambling to protect its image while restructuring its hierarchy? Or for the woman who spent 10 years holding together the most volatile show in sports television, only to watch her name disappear overnight from the empire she helped build? Because if this is what success looks like inside ESPN's new order, we have to wonder just how many more careers will quietly collapse before the story's truly told. Within 48 hours of Molly Qerim's goodbye post, her image had vanished from every ESPN banner, thumbnail, and promo clip. By the following week, auditions were already underway, with a revolving cast of fill-ins taking her seat beside Stephen A. Smith. And by November 3rd, Shay Cornett was officially named the new host of First Take. That's a turnaround so fast, it almost feels rehearsed. If this really was just a quiet contract disagreement, why the scramble? Why replace her before her chair had even cooled? The speed suggests precision, and precision means planning. Someone inside ESPN wanted this transition to happen quickly, cleanly, and without questions. But the more efficiently the network tried to erase Qerim, the louder the whispers became.
I think we'll start with Molly Qerim.
Ooh, she's out.
She, yesterday when we talked, we knew that she was leaving, but we didn't know she was leaving like immediately, which is an indication that, man, this thing's a bit more complicated than just they couldn't settle on the money. It just seems more seriously. She's off the show now.
Publicly, ESPN's president of content, Burke Magnus, stayed on message. He told reporters there was no controversy and insisted that Qerim simply wanted to explore other things. Behind that calm statement, however, were numbers that told another story. A $500,000 offer for the woman who kept the network's top-rated morning show under control, compared to Stephen A. Smith's towering $20 million annual payout. Add to that her requests for creative freedom, which insiders claim were blocked again and again, and the picture stops looking like mutual respect and starts looking like quiet exile. Magnus said she left on her own, but when every promotional trace of her disappeared in under 2 days, it didn't feel voluntary. It felt like containment. We watched as the contradictions piled up. On air, Stephen A. was emotional, thanking her for a decade of loyalty. Off air, he dropped lines that only deepened the confusion. She abruptly resigned, he said, before adding that the details were none of y'all's business. Emmanuel Acho seized on that moment, accusing Smith of playing both sides, giving just enough information to fuel speculation, then hiding behind privacy. That single phrase became a turning point. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about Qerim leaving. It was about who inside ESPN was shaping the version of events we were being allowed to hear.
Whether she goes to FS1 or launches her own show on YouTube, I wish Molly Qerim nothing but the best. I don't want to see her fail, but at the same time, I don't see a path to success. It is hard to build an audience by yourself. It's hard to build and sustain an audience when it's just you.
While executives and talent fought to steer the narrative, the cost of the whole saga fell squarely on Molly's shoulders. For nearly 2 decades, she had built her reputation at the network, guiding First Take through its loudest moments and protecting its credibility when tempers flared. Former hosts called her the glue, the calm voice that kept the chaos watchable. Yet when she finally asked for what she had earned, more pay, more autonomy, and a chance to create something new, the answer was silence. Instead of recognition, she got a smaller offer and a shrinking role. To call it a contract dispute is to ignore the weight of betrayal that followed. We can't overlook the human strain behind the headlines. Qerim has spoken publicly about her long battle with endometriosis, a condition that often left her in pain during broadcasts. Colleagues remember her pushing through surgeries and long recovery nights, showing up on camera as if nothing was wrong. For 10 years, she managed that fight, while carrying one of the toughest roles in sports television, moderating 2 of the most aggressive personalities in the business, day after day. That kind of endurance should have earned respect.
Instead, it earned a pay gap and an exit no one could explain. When a network rewards loyalty with replacement, we have to ask what loyalty even means anymore.
I believe this is something that we've seen from Stephen A. as of late, though. With the whole thing with LeBron, whenever LeBron went and got in his face, though, even your tone afterwards, whenever he's breaking down that situation, oh, well, if he would have done something, we would have been fighting.
Oh gosh, yeah.
What are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? As a young person that looked up to Stephen A. Smith for so many years, man, it's
you said past tense. You said looked.
By contrast, Stephen A. Smith's power only expanded. His new contract wasn't just a deal, it was a coronation. $20 million a year made him the highest paid personality in ESPN history and gave him creative control few others could dream of. He now appears on First Take, NBA Countdown, Monday Night Football, and even political coverage. With that kind of reach, Smith isn't just a commentator, he's a brand that dictates the network's direction. Insiders describe a workplace that revolves around him, where producers adjust programming to match his schedule, and co-hosts tread carefully around his preferences. When one person becomes that essential, the power balance collapses. In that light, Qerim's departure looks less like coincidence and more like consequence. Anyone not aligned with Smith's vision risked being sidelined. Her push for independence may have been seen as resistance, and resistance isn't tolerated when an empire is being built. We've heard similar whispers before, colleagues describing how Smith's circle of trust is small, how disagreements rarely survive long. In a company desperate for ratings and stability, keeping their most bankable star happy might have mattered more than fairness to everyone else.
What is the upside for anyone there other than Stephen A. Smith? Like, is there, because we've seen Max Kellerman leave that show and he's, popping back up now with Zuffa Boxing. We've obviously seen Skip Bayless and what his career has become post ESPN. Molly Qerim, like, as we map this out, I don't know where she lands. There's not like an obvious spot.
Meanwhile, ESPN continues to insist that the reshuffle is part of a broader evolution. Cornette's appointment was described as the start of a new generation of First Take. The statement sounded polished, but to many, it felt like a quiet admission that the old era had been erased. Even Cornette herself told reporters she hadn't spoken to Qerim since taking the job, a detail that highlights just how complete the separation was. The woman who carried the show for a decade was gone, and the network was already rewriting the story as renewal, not loss.
For those who followed Qerim's journey from digital host to morning anchor, the emotional undercurrent is hard to ignore. She gave nearly 20 years to the same network, only to see her name vanish overnight. Industry veterans call it the harsh truth of television. When the next big thing arrives, history becomes optional. But here, it feels sharper, because this isn't just about replacing one host with another. It's about how easily years of work can be overshadowed by one man's growing empire. Stephen A. Smith now stands at the peak of ESPN's mountain, the voice that shapes its debates, the face that sells its ads, and the personality too valuable to challenge. But every empire built on singular power carries a cost. Behind the bright lights and record contracts lies a warning for everyone watching from within those studio walls. If someone like Molly Qerim can be erased this quickly, what hope does anyone else have? Smith's deal may have secured his throne, yet it has also turned the spotlight onto the people left behind. Qerim is rebuilding on her own terms, quietly plotting her next chapter, free from the politics of Bristol. ESPN, meanwhile, moves forward with a fresh face at the desk,
and the lingering unease that refuses to fade. Because this story was never just about a contract or a promotion. It was about what happens when one voice becomes louder than the institution itself. Stephen A. Smith earns $20 million a year. His face dominates every broadcast, every segment, every headline. Molly Qerim, once the steady compass of First Take, is now carving a path beyond the network that turned its back on her. But the real question isn't where she's going. It's what comes next for the empire she left behind. How long can one man's power go unchecked before the cracks begin to show? Tell us what you think in the comments, because this saga isn't over. It's only getting louder.
Until next time, stay curious, stay watching, and remember, in television, no crown lasts forever.